Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. This is Chris Parker, and I have Pedro Lopez Sela coming in from Mexico City. And we connected at the openexo.com community, the exponential innovator community that's really around the world. And I am a bit at a loss for words on how to introduce him because he has so many degrees and he's involved in so many things in so many places. I'm not even going to try, but it's all about innovation and really, I think even pushing humanity forward. So, Pedro, welcome. Can you please introduce what do you do and really focus on why do you do what you do?
Uh, Thank you for having me, Chris, by the way. This is very exciting for me. Um, that's a very hard question, and strangely, when I ask it to myself, I get a different question every day. But I would say that I come from a family that has been around impact forever, and since I was a child, we were always thinking about giving back. It was an important part of our lives, and that meant a lot, especially when I started growing up. Right now, I have the opportunity, I guess, to move humanity forward. I work a lot on doing projects that mean an impact and that are aimed at getting the world to a better place than it was given to me. And in that arena or that area, what I found is that innovation is a very powerful tool, as well as entrepreneurship, to make that change happen. So I would say that I focus on impact, but I use innovation as a tool.
Nice. And if you don't mind, let me loop back and you want to leave the world a better place than you found it, I think is what you just said.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you? Because there's many people in humanity who actually don't care about that, I think, based on what I observe. But why is that a key motivator and a direction in your life?
I really don't know,
Okay.
but it has been a driver for more than 40 years. So I just take it as a given. It's just part of me.
Okay. Well, if it's sort of your internal motivation and your internal spirit, and if you're connected with that, then maybe that's even the most powerful thing. So, no, beautiful. And the different initiatives you're involved in, with OpenEXO, which is the open community for exponential, transformation thinkers and doers. How does that connect back to your other initiatives, like Bold Labs and other? I looked up Santander X. You're involved in looks like incubators or accelerators to help people make an impact. How does that all come
Yeah.
together?
So the story, because one of the things is that I'm hyperactive, and the other thing about me is that I don't know how to say no. So the combination of those has been a lot of fun, to tell
Yeah.
you the truth. Basically, what happened is that I started doing a philanthropy actions with friends, or social responsibility, or however you want to call it, many years ago. And about 20 years ago, in 2000, we got together because the question was, how can we make it systemic? Because it was just like an effort that we made every other month or so, and we were not really achieving impact. It was fun. It felt nice, but it was too sporadic. So we needed something that would transcend a bit more. And we ended up deciding to create a foundation. And it was interesting because we had no idea about what kind of foundation we wanted. And it took us about a year and a half to figure it out. We were very close to opening a foundation on different causes, but we understood that most of them were already being taken care of, either good or not that good, but somebody was there doing something. And we ended up creating this thing called Fomento Geek. It's like
Hmm.
promoting geekness,
Hmm.
basically. And we ended up training kids that were from poor communities that had coding skills so that they could first self-employ and then develop SMEs. Uh, and that has been basically my journey, because that was how I discovered that both innovation and entrepreneurship were very powerful tools for change. We ended up, as far as we know, some guy said that we were the first e-learning in the world because we started giving lectures through ICQ. I mean, this was a long time ago.
Wow. So that was by text then?
No, well, by voice,
Okay.
but it was almost like texting because it was so slow. And we started that in 2000. And then after that, we started creating an ecosystem. We didn't have the names at the time, but it's what now we call incubator, accelerator, soft landing, and all that very lingo Silicon Valley names, you know. We had 5 offices in Mexico. We opened one in Tokyo, one in Silicon Valley, one in Vancouver. And it just blew. I mean, we had no expectation of that. It was a non-for-profit that was founded by us and funded by us. And we were just kids at the time. We had like 25 or something. What ended up happening was basically that the vertical of IT just disappeared, and it became the platform of new organizations. And because some of us were into other sides of other areas of technology, myself, I studied biotech, for example. We ended up working with people from other areas different than IT. And that basically meant that we started working with scientists in order to develop ventures. And because, especially in the case of the US, we were a non-for-profit founded by Mexicans 2 blocks away from the McLaren agency in Palo Alto, California. That was pretty weird. So somebody in Washington just summoned us, and we went there and started talking to them about what we were doing. And that ended up becoming a very interesting journey, where we ended up working with the Department of Commerce and the National Science Foundation and the Department of State, because we understood that when you're able to change the mindset of a person through entrepreneurship and innovation, then they can change their environment, and then they can also become ambassadors of that with their communities. And I guess that in that sense, OpenEXO is a very powerful tool for that, because it's a very specialized way to see the world.
And you mentioned not for profit a number of times. You know, to use another business term, what's the business model behind it? I mean, how does it sustain and grow? Because it's I see it's been started in 2005. And it's still going. The Fomento Geek, how does it sustain itself? Is there?
We ended up understanding that we were really good at creating ventures and training people. So we created these other things around it that provide the services to people that can pay for that, such as Bold Labs or Canoe. And then with those other organizations, we bring in money to Fomento Geek.
Oh, no, okay. And if we go down to the Fomento Geek path a little bit more, who's the dream participant or the dream student that you would look for to give all these superpowers to? Like, how did that work?
So the process that we have in place right now is that we search for people that have already some kind of skill based on science, but that they do not have the resources or the network to make it happen. And usually that also comes with people that do not have the skills or the competencies in order to develop a venture from scratch. So we search with people that have those qualities. And the other thing that we also search for, and actually that's probably the most important one, is that they need to be big thinkers, or at least want to. and they need to have a special need to change the world. So if they have that kind of heart and that kind of mindset and that kind of skills, we're ready to help them.
So just unpack it a bit more. So you find these people, or do they apply to you?
It both
Yeah.
ways, and we work with people from basically Europe, America, and Asia. We haven't gotten into Africa yet. I'd love that, by the way, and because we're actually just one of the things that we want to do, I would say, is work in emerging economies and just change the way it works today. We think that there's a lot of talent in those countries. We believe that the world would benefit from them. And we're just trying to give them a little push so that they can do what they want to do.
Yeah. I don't know, my view, I'm curious what your opinion is. My view being, near and affiliated with some different accelerators and incubators is oftentimes there's a whole crowd of people who are sort of incubator junkies that they just, that's their, it's that their hobby,
specialty.
Their specialty is just being incubated. But for some reason never quite spread their wings, and therefore there can be quite some waste. And what I've also, talking to other coaches, some people I spoke to, they said they will never work with true startups again because startups are like puppies and all they're after is funding. And, so that, again, it's maybe black and white, but how do you sift through the noise to find the people that really have the capability and the ambition? Because that's not easy.
Question.
That's not easy.
Yeah. I would even say that it's a bit of magic, a bit of alchemy, and some kind of luck. Because you might have the methodology and all that stuff in place, but it's very complicated. So let me give you an example. When COVID started, we have an office in China for one of the ventures that we have, an innovation bridge between emerging economies and Asian venture capital and research centers. So we saw that it was coming big by December, probably. We started doing different things in different places. I myself participated in different hackathons. And then after that, what we understood, this is probably around May. We understood that a lot of people were doing hackathons to develop masks and things very basic in order to face COVID-19. And then the other thing was that after working 2 or 3 weeks, getting people in and convincing coaches and everything, the end of the process was basically turning on your camera and giving yourself a big round of applause, right? I, even though I love to dream and think and discuss and all that stuff, I do need execution and I do need tangible things. So we started talking to different friends and we created a process that is now called Company Builder Transferencia AP, which is basically a program for company building. So we've been doing those for almost 10 years. We've had 47 editions so far. But always those have been put in place with help of local governments or international organizations or development banks. This time, however, nobody had money. There was no leadership. Everyone was very confused, or everyone is still a bit confused. And what we ended up defining was that we could either just watch Netflix or do something. And we created this program with no money. We started just going on social media, asking for people's help, both coaches or instructors or mentors as a teaching team, pro bono work, and also the teams that wanted to develop exponential solutions for the new world. And after that, we went to this thing called Pacific Alliance, which is kind of like a joint venture of the governments of Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile, and they're being supported by the Inter-American Development Bank. And we basically told them, we're doing this exercise, we're going to support the teams at the beginning, and then we need you guys to catch the teams and keep on moving them forward. Because in there, they have a network of angel investors, they have a network of accelerators, and they have a network of tech transfer offices. So long story short, we were aiming at maybe 5 teams per country, maybe 15 guys in the teaching team. And the response was overwhelming. Long story short, on July 15th, we ended up starting a process with 186 teams from the 4 countries and a teaching team of 300 people.
Wow.
And we're running it right now with them. So going back to your question, the thing is that at first for me at least, it's very difficult to understand who's going to be able to thrive. There's a lot of stuff going around. It has to do with the entrepreneur, the problem they're trying to solve, the capabilities. And it also has to do, I think, with the ecosystem. There are some ecosystems that are very focused on venture capital and getting funding and investors. And others are more focused on traction, usually because there is no venture capital there. It's not a choice. And I'm a big fan of traction. I do believe that in a way it's even better, because if you're able to start selling and get a customer base, then if you want to go talk to investors, the valuation is going to look so different. So I guess it's a combination of everything. And in my experience, I guess, as you were saying, that people just tend to specialize. There are guys that specialize in contests, so they win awards for being the best entrepreneur ever, even though they haven't sold a product. Or there are other guys that specialized in incubators or in selling to angel investors or VCs.
Yeah, it seems like there is sometimes this self-congratulatory, people get together and pat each other on the back and tell each other how great they are, but no customers in sight. And so so this initiative that you started with 180 plus entrepreneurs, do you expect those people already to have established some sort of traction, or is it really going from concept to some sort of product definition or
So this is interesting.
It sounds very early days what you do with them, but I'm just curious.
We have teams that are doing, for example, marketplaces with blockchain. Other guys that are doing a future of food with nanotech. We have other guys that are literally doing marmalade. So it's a very broad type of process. The other thing also is that we have guys that are selling a little bit, and others that literally started thinking about their project 4 weeks ago. So it's very mixed. We have no idea how this is going to end. We're finishing the process by the end of the month. By then we're doing evaluations, and then we're going to divide them into basically 4 different groups. The guys that are not ready to move forward, and then the guys that are ready to move forward, we're going to divide them into 3 teams. One that goes to investment, the other one that goes to tech transfer, and the other one that goes to acceleration. I don't have the info, but I would say that it's very likely that most of them are not selling yet, and the ones that are selling yet are still at a very early stage.
So I'm just curious with, as I'm sometimes involved in venture building. My belief is you should start talking to the customer as a potential customer for validation as quickly as possible. Do you, I guess, agree with that, or do you see there's a different sweet spot?
No. I mean, what you're saying is basically what we do every day. We One of the interesting things about the process that actually evolved from Fomento Geek is that we have now we're working with a methodology called evidence-based entrepreneurship and lean innovation.
Mm-hmm.
This was developed throughout, I don't know, the last 15 years or so by guys from the National Innovation Network and people that have been doing tech venture building all over the world. And it is being used by trainers from the World Intellectual Property Organization.
Mm.
And it has been developed with basically all the books that you probably read from Steve Blank, Eric
Yeah.
Ries, the guys at MIT. And I would say that the base of the process is lean startup. You need to get out of the building and go talk
Yeah.
to people.
Yeah.
And that is going to make you focus a lot more on what you really need to do.
So
Definitely you need to interview.
the evidence-based
Uh-huh.
seems a beautiful word. My observation is oftentimes the ego can interfere with evidence, meaning I believe
every
this
day of the week.
I believe this thing we're building is the coolest shit ever, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for someone who's so passionate in film land. You know, before we started recording it, I shared a little bit about my film hobby and passion, and I learned so much there. But like in there, there's a concept of kill your darlings. So if you're telling your story, that there's something that maybe is completely so important to you because it reminds you of your pet cat or something. You want it in the story, but it has no purpose. It actually might even be distracting from the actual experience of the customer. And I don't know. For me, I'm curious if you have an opinion there, because on one hand, you need that passion of I believe in this thing, in this ego of I can, you know, whatever's there now sucks and I can do better. You know, so there must be ego.
Yep.
And there must be some sort of validation for the customer. So how do you balance that with people?
That's a great question. One of the recipes that I found that works is having at least two people in the team with the same amount of ego and with a different view, so they can kill each other and make a decision.
Yeah.
If you have a guy that is going on their own, it's not going to work. If you have a guy that has a very a strong opinion and a very big ego and they have a yes team, it's not going to work.
No.
And you need to do that every day. I mean, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and every week I do something stupid because of ego. I mean, I guess it's just part of the process, but I'm very lucky because I work with people that are so much more intelligent than I am, and that are already know that when I'm doing something stupid, they can just, you know, yell at me, and I'm gonna just get the message. So you definitely need that. Yeah.
There's a beautiful model. It's an older book called E-Myth Revisited. I think it's probably 1980s. It's actually a book about franchising. The second half of the book is about franchising. So if you're not into franchise model, forget that. But the first half, it's really great wisdom and anecdotes about the entrepreneur. And so E-Myth is the entrepreneur myth, because, you know, at the time that the entrepreneur was this holy grail, this magic person who, you know, comes up with this brilliant thing. And the premise of the book is that's bullocks. You know, there's always multiple perspectives. And the three personalities, there's the content expert, so the passionate expert. Then there's the gamesman, so the commercial, you know, make the thing happen without necessarily love for the content. And then there's the operator, so the efficiency person. And the argument there is, and I think if you do something on your own, somehow you have to balance that in your time and your head. But if you have, you know, because if there's only an expert, then that person will never sell or grow or even go efficient. They'll be looking at quality all the time. And if you're an operator, then you'll be organizing all the time. And if you're a gamesman, you won't have actually delivered anything. So it's E-Myth Revisited. I think it's a wonderful book. It's quite old, but it's
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it's profound for me.
I'm gonna look for it.
Yeah. Let me, I can put all that, also that in the show notes. And I wrote down the evidence-based innovation because I'd love to find a link to that and include that as well, because it's.
I'm gonna send you information. So what we ended up doing is that we digitized everything. Again, following Peter's Diamandis recommendation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We developed a platform like 8 years ago, and right now we have version number 5, and it's called Canoe, and it's just open for the people to use.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even thought about the business model. We work with organizations, and we charge them to open cohorts so that we can fund all the other guys that need to use the platform and don't pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have there is basically a new set of canvases that we work with the guys that developed the first ones, like Steve and Alex and all those guys. And then it's actually very exciting because it's, as far as we know, the only platform that has the EXO canvas digitized.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's based on interviews. And it has the IRL, for example, so that embedded in the platform, which means that you do need to make the interviews in order to validate the hypothesis. And once you validated them, then you can start advancing in the ERL. So again, coming to what you were saying about interviews, we definitely think that the market is the one that answers every question.
Yeah. Yeah. And then have the bravery to do that. No, I love it. And it's a little bit related to the ebullient story, because I have chosen to do this myself, simply because it's mostly a space of creativity for me, and that's why these podcasts are more of a discovery, joyful, playful creativity as opposed to monetized. And through my own learning and discovery and suffering, that's how I came up with the simplicity scan, which was it's essentially just a simple alignment tool with 15 questions. And what I've told myself is I will never get involved in an initiative until myself and the other leaders are able to come down to a single page with that canvas. Even if it's full of questions, even if we agree, we don't know anything, when there's 15 questions that are answering the question, that's fine. That way, at least we know what we don't know.
Exactly.
And so far that is, it protects me from my own shiny object syndrome of just chasing after people and trying to help them. So we've got a couple minutes left, but you just mentioned that you have larger organizations, maybe corporates, that are able to subscribe and bring cohorts into that system. Can you describe maybe who the perfect customer is for that? Because there's a whole international audience of mostly corporates, I think, listening to this. So maybe
so
some
we've
of those people
used
would
it
benefit
with
from this.
I would say with two types of organizations: a big private companies that want to do innovation, for example, both services like the big fours, the big four consulting firms. We've used it with pharmaceutical companies when they're doing corporate innovation and trying to develop a venture. But we've also used it, for example, in education. Guys studying innovation in MBAs, universities that want to develop spin-offs from research that their professors have been doing. So I would say those two, and in those two different examples, we work with all size organizations you can think of, small and big private or public universities, and firms that have offices in 180 countries or just middle market.
Okay. Well, let me if you send me a link to that as well, and I'd love to include that in the show notes.
Yes.
No, outstanding. And I guess one other question, I'll come back to you, I think, as an entrepreneur yourself. How do you keep going? It sounds like, because you have, I stopped counting the number of degrees you have from the number of countries, and the number of initiatives that you've got your fingers on, and the number of people that you're supporting and helping and inspiring. How do you maintain your own because you know, you're talking to me and you're glowing and you're joyful about what you're doing. How do you continue to energize and motivate?
So I'm really lucky because I have this kind of strange metabolism that just keeps me moving forward. And also I would say that for me now, I because of the EXO framework, I have my personal MTP and all that. But I found
what is your personal MTP, if I can interrupt quickly?
empowering people for a better world.
Okay, well that makes sense.
And basically, what happened to me is that in a different phrasing, but I found my purpose very early in life, and it has been my driver, I would say. And then the other thing for me is that my wife and my kids have supported all my craziness throughout the years, and I would say that's very important to me as well. And with those two things in hand, I think you can change the world. So I'm moving all the time and working in different initiatives all the time. Again, because I think that the time that we have in this planet is like so little that you need to move quickly in order to make a difference.
Wow, move quickly in order to make a difference. Pedro, this has been delightful. Sadly, we need to wrap up.
Likewise.
If you, as the audience, go to ebullient.com/podcast/Pedro Lopez Sela, you'll find the links to the video and the podcast. Also, LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of Pedro, and we'll have that link in the show notes as well. So, Pedro, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for the time and the care and for everything you're doing.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Learn more at ebullient.com/podcast.